Hey everybody, welcome to Home Recording Made Easy and Mix Tip Tuesday, where every Tuesday I show you a new mixing tip to help you make more professional sounding mixes in your home studio. Before we get to this week's tip, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Make sure you hit that notification bell and also stick around to the end of the video, because at the end of the video I have something I want to give you absolutely free that's really going to help you with your mixing training, so be sure to stick around. Okay, everybody, welcome. This Mix Tip Tuesday, we are going to talk about a concept called mixing with controlled compression. And you may be asking yourself, well, what does that mean? Well, let me give you a little bit of thought process behind this. So mixing with controlled compression, I use the word control compression, meaning that we're going to compress on our individual tracks and on our buses in a very small amount of way, meaning we're not looking to over crush anything. We're looking to just control the dynamics, maybe a couple of dB, 2-3 dB on the individual tracks. So the song retains its dynamics and it doesn't sound like it's very squished or very flat. One of the problems that I see with some of the people that send me mixes, whether it's part of here or mixingmadeeasy.net, is that when they're first starting with compression, they tend to over compress. And the reason why people over compress when they first start using compression, this is really, really relevant with beginners and intermediates, is because compression is one of the hardest things for someone new to the craft of mixing to hear. And the only way you really audibly hear it as it's really obvious is when you over compress. So a lot of times newbies will put a compressor on their tracks, they'll start compressing and they don't hear the difference. They turn the plugin on and off, they really can't hear it. They don't really hear any audible difference regardless of the plugin. And they think, oh, it's just a bunch of hype, I don't know why I can't hear it. So the more I crank the compression, the more, oh, now I hear the change in the audio, and that tends to over compress things. Now there's a time and a place to over compress, and we're going to talk about that in future videos of Mix Tip Tuesday. So compression is one of the hardest things to hear and to tune your ears to know what to listen for and to know how to hear compression, okay? So one of the things I want to recommend that you do after you watch this video is click the link in the description box and you can go out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and it would be worth your while to pick up the training course, Compression Made Easy. Compression Made Easy will help you not only understand the ins and outs of compression if you're new, but how to listen and what to listen for. And it really helps tune your ear on how to hear compression. And once you hear compression for the first time and you know what to listen for, it's like one of those aha moments. There's several aha moments you'll have during your mixing journey as you're learning the craft over the course of time. That is one of them for sure. And it's one of the early ones that once you hear it, it'll change the way you think about compression. It will change the way you think about mixing, and it'll actually give you the nice foundation to start moving up to more advanced mixing techniques. Okay, so compression is key. So go check out Compression Made Easy, and if you stick around to the end of the video, you're going to get a coupon code to get a discount on that course as it is. So that is one of the things that I always see. We're over compressing, and I want to show you how to use a concept called control compression. So we're going to look at this on drums, and basically, again, what control compression means, and we're going to take a look at this on a drum kit. And again, regardless of the plugin, it really doesn't matter. We're going to take a look at the Plugin Alliance SSL 4000E channel strip, and we're just going to take a look at the compressor section of this channel strip. Nothing else on the plugin is being used. This is a raw mix with no other really processing being done, but you can do this with your stock compressor. You can do this concept with an LA2A 1176. Doesn't matter what compressor it is. We're just using this as an example. Okay, so the concept is this, especially with drums, where you have, where we're going to be having multiple microphones on several different elements of a drum kit. One of the things I like to do with compression is on a drum kit is I want to set the ratio, the attack time, and the release time on all the different elements of the drum kit exactly the same. And I'll show you how to set that up in a second. And then the only thing I want to do between the different drum elements is use the threshold to dial or lower the threshold to get the desired amount of compression on our gain reduction meter, which is around 2 to 3 dB. Okay. Now you may say, why is the attack, the release, and the ratio going to be the same, Dave, on all these drum elements? Because when you do that, then the compressor on each one of the drum elements is going to behave and react the same. And what that's going to do, it's going to kind of glue the drum kit together so it sounds like one instrument. The drums sound like a single instrument and not 5 different instruments, meaning a kick instrument, a snare instrument, a tom instrument, a floor tom instrument, an overhead instrument. It's going to sound like one cohesive instrument, and it's going to glue it together, give it a little bit more punch, a little bit more tightness. Okay, so that's the tip. So the first step is when you're setting up your compressor, is we're going to pick the same release, attack time, and ratio. And you say, well, how do you do that? Well, let's look at our kick drum, for example. Here's our kick drum. Okay, and no other processing on this. Our compressor on this particular plugin is right over here on the left-hand side, right in the middle. You see the compressed section. We have our ratio here. Okay, we have our release time here. We have our threshold here. On this particular plugin, we have a mix button where you can do parallel compression, where you can dial in some of the dry signal. But for this example, we're going to put it at 100%. We only want to hear 100% of the compressed signal. We don't want to do any kind of parallel compression here. Okay. And our attack time is going to be on this particular plugin. If you click this little LED next to the release, see this little LED here? And it's going to pull the release knob out. See, when I click on that, pulls the release knob out. This is the way the console really is. That's a fast attack. So there's a little F above that little LED. And again, I'll try to zoom in editing so you can see that. The little F stands for fast attack. We have slow attack, fast attack. Okay. Now, depending on the compressor you're using, you can have a variable attack. But for this example, I want to keep it simple. We're going to keep it on a fast attack. We want to catch those transients right away, but you can experiment with this on a slow attack. Typically on drums, if it's a pop song, R&B song where I want the drums to sit a little bit more back in the mix, I'll use a fast attack. Okay, but every compressor is different, but it doesn't really matter for this example. Now, what I do to set my release time first is what I typically do. I'm going to play back the audio, and I'm going to look at the gain reduction meter, which is right here. Under this limit compressor, you're going to see the LEDs, and you have 3 dB, 6 dB, 10 dB, 14 dB, 20 dB gain reduction. If I play back the audio, you can see we're compressing about 6 dB, 10 on its heaviest hits. So what I'm going to do is the first thing I do is I take the threshold and I lower it to get about 10 dB so I can see the LED meter kind of moving. And then I use my release time to make it as slow as I can, so between the kick hits, the compressor grabs and releases before the next kick hit, if that makes sense, okay? So if I were to go slow release, you can see it doesn't fully release before the next kick drum hit, which softens the kick drum, which if that's the desired effect you're going for, that's fine. To me, that's too much. I want the punch and the attack of that kick drum still. So I'm going to bring it back to more of a slower attack. 12 o'clock in this case would be more of a medium style. Still probably a hair too slow, a little bit faster. Okay, and I'm watching this meter kind of beat into the beat of the music, kind of pulsing to the beat. Okay, the compressor is releasing. But when he does a double hit, it holds a little bit too long. So I'm going to be a little bit conservative. I want to make sure it gets out of the way. Okay, so that's our release, right about there. Okay, so now on the ratio side, which is right up here, typically on something like drums or anything where I'm going to do controlled compression, I'm only going to use a 2-to-1 ratio, maybe up to a 4-to-1 ratio. The higher the ratio, the little bit more compression you're going to get. But again, we're trying to compress very conservatively. So good rule of thumb, so I go 2-to-1 ratio. Okay, I set my release, I set my ratio, my attack time is set. Okay, these 3 things are not going to change from channel to channel on the drums, kick, snare, toms, so on and so forth. The only thing I do is I'm dialing back the threshold to achieve about 3 dB of compression. On this compressor, it's about the first LED. See the little 3 down here? Again, I'll try to remember to zoom in during editing. Okay, now I'm going to play this back. Okay, so we got about 10 dB, way too much. So I'm going to pull up the threshold to where there's no compression and start to lower it. Okay? So on the heaviest hits, we're about 3 dB. If it goes into the 6 dB mark, if he really slams the kick drum, that's okay. Okay? Maybe a little bit more. Okay? So we got about 3 dB of compression. So now on the single kick drum, you may say to yourself, well, if I bypass this plugin, does it sound any different? Let's see. Before? After? Not really. Very subtle. That's the point. It's not even, and I have my ears tuned into this and I can hear a very, very subtle difference. A lot of you watching this video may have not have heard that difference at all. Again, I'll shut up and toggle it on and off just so you can hear it and rewind the video and check it. So here's with compression. I'll bypass the plugin a few times. Here we go. Okay, did you hear a difference? Go back and rewind the video. It's very subtle. There is a difference here, but it's very subtle. But the point is not really to hear how audible it really is. It's going to be subtle. That's the point. Controlled compression, very subtle. Depending on the program material, I just want to catch the peaks. It's going to tighten things up a little bit. And on a single track, it's not going to be so obvious. But the accumulative effect across all the drums, it's going to make a little bit more of a difference. So now once I've set up my kick drum, okay, I got my attack and everything, I got it all set up. I'm just going to copy the settings on this, copy, and I'm going to go over to now my snare. I'll turn this kick drum down a little bit, solo up the snare, and I'm going to paste in these settings. Okay, so now I pasted in the settings. So now the attack time, whoop, for some reason it didn't copy. The attack time, the ratio is 2:1. Let's make sure on the kick drum. Let me go back to the kick and make sure the attack time. Let me copy that again. Copy that, and then we'll go to the snare. It should have pasted. There we go. So now it would have pasted the attack time. Okay. So the ratio, the release, and the attack are the same. So now I'm just going to use the threshold again to dial in the desired amount of compression. Again, too much here. This is on the snare. Oh no, excuse me. This is the sub kick, not the snare. We got kick, sub kick. Same concept though. I'm going to dial this back. Too much compression. Okay. About 3 dB of compression. Okay, so now we got our inside mic and our outside mic. Now let's go to our snare. Again, we're going to paste the settings. I don't know why it's not copying. It should. This plugin usually does that. Okay, we can copy, and then we can go to our top snare. We should be able to paste. Really odd, doesn't do it. Okay, that's strange. Okay, we'll just do it manually. No big deal. Here's the release time, 2:1 ratio. Same thing. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use our threshold. I'll turn up the snare so you can hear it. A little too much compression. Now on the snare, it's okay if on certain hits it goes to 6 dB. Because the snare, it's a very dynamic, you know, drummer's going to swing a little harder, the hits are going to be a little bit more, a little less consistent. So if most of the hits are 3 dB, occasionally a hit that's 6 dB on that second LED, no big deal. Okay, it's catching the peaks, that's okay. Okay, so that's our snare top, snare bottom. Let's do the same thing. Let's just open this up again. I don't know why it doesn't paste. It ought to, but it doesn't, but that's okay. We'll do it ourselves. Okay, way too much on the bottom snare. Okay, now we'll go, now we're not doing anything else on the plugin. We're just doing compression. So regardless of the compressor you're using, you can do the same exact thing. EQ and all the other things we'll talk about in later videos. Hi-hats. Let me see if he has playing a bunch of hi-hat hits here anywhere. Okay, here we go. So we're going to open this up. We're going to do fast attack. Okay. Much like the snare, the hi-hat could be a little bit more dynamic than normal, so that's okay. The majority of the hits are right around 3 dB, but it'll get into that 6 dB clip a little bit. If he hits the hi-hat a little hard, no big deal. Now also too, you're going to pick up some of the snare in the hi-hat mic, so keep that in mind. So just make sure you don't over compress it. I would rather have you under compress it than over compress it, because this is only one stage of compression. Throughout our Mix Tip Tuesdays and throughout a mix, we're going to do many different layers of compression. We're talking about this more and more in different Mix Tip Tuesdays, but for this particular one, we just want to control the compression, just control the performance, okay? So now we're going to come over to tom. Well, we'll go to our overheads, and then we're not going to do the toms. He only hits the toms a few times, but you would do the same thing on toms. Let's go to our overheads. Let's solo that up. Okay? So it's a stereo track, so you're going to see a stereo track here. Let's get fast attack, 2-to-1 ratio. Pull this back a little. Okay. Occasionally getting into that little 6 dB mark, no big deal. Okay. So once I do that through all my drums, now what we're going to do is we're going to hear the cumulative effect of this. So let me just, and we can do the same thing on, let's do the rooms and then we'll listen. Here's our room mics. So again, fast attack. Ratio, release is the same. Okay. So unlike what we talk about listening for compression, how to hear compression in future videos, this time around, again, I'm more looking at the compression gain reduction meter than I am listening to what it's actually doing at this stage of compression. The only time that this happens is at control compression. Unless your ears are really tuned in, like I said, you may not even hear the difference. But anyway, let's listen back and let me just shut off all of these plugins at once so you can hear the difference. Here we go. Before. After. Listen to the punch, low end of the kick drum, and the crack of the snare. That's where you're really going to hear it. Okay? So again, it's very subtle, but that's the point. When you do this on all of your drums, and by the way, on all of your tracks, whenever I'm using channel strips like this or compression as my first thing, which is in most mixes, again, we're just using a channel strip as an example this time around, I do this on all the tracks, guitars, percussion, bass, vocals. I always start off with controlled compression, even if the tracks are recorded really well, really consistently, meaning maybe they were compressed and recorded on the way in to the DAW. That usually happens too. Even then, I'm always compressing a little bit. That is setting the foundation for what I want to do next in the next set of videos, where we talk about things like using different compressors to now, if we want to over compress things to make certain things stand out, to maybe move certain instruments in our mix on our 3D sound field, which we'll talk about in future videos. All of what we're going to do going forward from a compression point of view all starts with controlled compression. So I would encourage you to, again, you can use any compressor to do this. Go ahead after you're, you've done some of the things we've talked about in Mix Tip Tuesday and prior videos. And again, all the links will be in the description box. You could check out prior videos. When you get to this stage, try using a compressor and just go through all your tracks and just use a little bit of control compression. And if you have third-party plugins, this is a great time to use these kind of plugins when, again, in this case, we're using a channel strip, because now all of your tracks are running through the same compressor. And again, it gives it a little bit more of that cohesiveness. In this particular case, it gives it more of that SSL vibe, right? By running all your tracks through the same compressor with very light amount of compression, you are going to get things that kind of glue together and seem a little bit more solid, okay, sounding. Now, again, I don't use the same, now when we get to the bass guitar, I wouldn't necessarily use the same ratio and the same release as the drums. on every grouping of instruments, those things are going to change. But on drums, where we have multiple mics on one instrument like drums, I'm going to use same release, same ratio, same attack, whether it's fast or slow, depending on your program material, and just use a threshold. When we get to bass, I may change those parameters, but I'm still just trying to achieve just a couple, 2-3 dB of compression. Okay, so that is controlled compression in a nutshell. Check it out on your next mix. I hope you enjoyed this video. Now I want to thank you for staying till the end of the video. So I want to give you a free gift. There's a couple of things I want to give you. The first thing I want you to do is go out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and I want to give you 5 free mixing training courses worth about $210. It's 5 free courses. Go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Right on the homepage, you'll see where you can sign up and you get those absolutely free. Do that today. The second thing I want to give you is I want to give you a coupon code. The coupon code is YouTube25. It'll be in the description box below, YouTube25. That will take 25% off any of my training courses at homerecordingmadeeasy.com. And this is where I want to urge you to check out Compression Made Easy. If you're new to compression, again, link will be in the description box below. Put that coupon code in at checkout, take 25% off Compression Made Easy. But if you already have Compression Made Easy, or you don't feel like you need that course, you have a good handle on compression, any other course, YouTube 25 will work for you. Last but not least, I want you to go check out mixingmadeeasy.net. If you want to learn things like this and really learn the craft of mixing and get down into the technical detail, but not in a technical way, in a very layman's terms way, check out mixingmadeeasy.net. It'll be the best investment you will ever make in your mixing craft. I promise you that. So check out mixingmadeeasy.net. And last but not least, if you ever use control compression, is this a new term? How do you set up your mix for compression? I'd love to hear from you. Comment below and let me know what you do with compression, and if this is a new concept. And if it is, let me know in the comments below what you think of it when you tried it out for yourself on your next mix. And until the next video, I've been Dave with homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.